surprisingly able to get a lot of reading done today. So I'll continue. Information coming from parallel worlds travels outside the limits of space and time. It is hyperspatial and intricately woven into the fabric of reality. It is enfolded within deeper dimensions of the quantum potential field. We are totally embedded in this field. The field is potential. It is present everywhere and throughout everyone. There is nothing where the field is not. It is made of information. One awakens to this potential field of information as one's potential unfolds. It is part of our microsystem, connected to each of us in a deeply intimate way. These connections include our sense of consciousness. We are organized in an efficient, convenient way where the messages will not be interfered with by the world of matter and mass. Consciousness could not be stable if it were not protected from outside information that would change it at a random from our inner intent. So the opening of portals to reality is within each one of us. The statement, "the kingdom of heaven is within you," takes on a physical reality when one becomes aware of the mechanism by which parallel worlds communicate with this world. In its ground state, such as the hydrogen atom, an electron can orbit a proton indefinitely. Interesting quote. Ask almost anyone in the world and they will admit to having some experience with the parallel worlds. Most have had some significant insights, revelations, premonitions, or psychic knowing that is paranormal. As we explore the nature of consciousness, we become more and more aware of how it works, and we better understand how we are connected to every world and everything and everyone. Everything is connected is one of the basic premises of quantum physics. The connection may, as the physicists are careful to point out, be hyperspatial, but something is connected. This connection applies to consciousness. In other words, once we understand consciousness, it becomes obvious that everything is conscious, and the consciousness is multidimensional. I want to explore this with you. Let us begin with one of the first experiments in quantum physics that demonstrate quantum potential field dynamics. This is referred to as the double-slit experiment. It was a relatively simple test using a fairly consistent photon gun that takes certain congruent wavelengths of light and shoots them down a light insulate tube. At the end of the tube was a single slit, a small opening in a light-resistant material. For all intents and purposes, the photon consistently goes through the slit and registers as a dot of light on the light-sensitive film on the other side of the slit. This small dot of light is called a particle. A light because it is just that, a small part of light. The next part of the experiment was to create a double slit at the end of the tube and see how the photon handled two slits at the same time. What made the experiment noteworthy was the fact that the photon registered as a wave, not a particle. That is, the photon went through both slits at the same time. On the light-sensitive film behind the slits, it looks like a series of waves hitting a beach. Its experiment has been replicated many times and has had some equally interesting variations. This change of form created a further series of experiments, and each became more fascinating. For example, 3 scientists at Temple University in 1986 constructed 2 light-insulated tubes, Tube A and Tube B, through which a photon gun was able to shoot fairly consistent forms of photons. They made the tubes insulated so that the photons could not switch from one tube to the other. They also made the tubes so that the photon could not be influenced as to which tube it entered. It just traveled randomly down one tube or the other. At the end of each tube, they constructed a gate, a single slit that could be opened or shut. The researchers began the experiment by opening a gate A at the end of tube A and keeping gate B at the end of tube B closed. This they discovered an amazing thing. When they opened gate A and shot the photon down the double tube, it would always go down tube A. If they closed tube A and opened tube B, the photon would always go down tube B. Wouldn't that make only sense? They concluded that the photon has conscious awareness as to which tube was open. The photon always chose the open gate. The open gate seemed to influence the quantum potential field, and in some way gave form to the potential of the photon so it appeared where it was expected to appear. The open gate gave form to the photon. It manifested accordingly. Okay, now I would like to know in that experiment if, the light beam went down, A, that it was closed at the end, but did it still go there and then come back? Did it shoot back from the door that's shutting it off? I don't think a light beam knew, oh, B is the way to go because that door is open. I would like to know whether it did go down A, but it doesn't say that. It's missing that little piece of information, just making us believe that, oh, it chose the right path. And it's like, how do you know? To continue the experiment, the scientists opened both gates. When they opened both A and B gates, the photon changed form. It changed from a particle and became a wave. It then went through both open gates. The scientists concluded that not only does the photon appear to know where the particles for escape is, but it can also change its form so that it fulfills its greatest potential. Both gates are utilized. That was not the end of the experiments. The researchers wanted to see if they could trick the photon, so these scientists began to further experiment. They shot the photon down tube A with gate A opened. Just as the photon got to the gate, they closed gate A and opened gate B. They wanted to know what the photon would do if the intended gate was closed right in the middle of the flight. The photon disappeared from tube A and immediately, without loss of time, appeared in tube B and went through gate B right on time. How, they asked themselves, could a photon change over to gate B without loss of time when the tubes are isolated against light transfer? To explain the mysterious disappearance and then reappearance of the photon, the scientists concluded that the photons exist only as a potential until we give it form. The changing of the gates gives the field of potential a specific form, and the potential photon takes the expected form. When measured to be a single photon, it takes on the characteristics of a particle photon. When measured to be a wave, given more than one slit to pass through at the same time, it becomes a wave. If one changes the measurement at the last split second, the potential photon responds accordingly because the field of potential is hyperspatial. It exists outside space and time. It knows what it wants before the test is completed. Even when enclosed in a light-isolated tube, the potential photon can change to another space and time inside another isolated tube and perform according to the laws of physics. There's a lot of other types of experiments that would say things just happen instantly. You change one thing and it changes the whole dynamics. And that part is true. That you change your thoughts and you change your whole dynamics thoughts. Like you change your thought within your family and then your family has to change. Kind of what I got to do with mine is I've got to change the way I'm constantly giving. And it's being upsetting because people want me to continue to give. But it's not an equal thing. It's like wearing me out. So I've got to stop that action. It's going to cause a lot of chaos, but in the end, it's forcing change. Just my action, without anybody even in the room. As long as I change my thoughts and change my direction, it will affect everybody else. Just like the way everybody else is acting, they affect my life and don't really recognize it. But it's sort of like, it does happen instantly. People don't have to be in the room. You don't have to really do anything. It's like this global shift that we need to make. It's not like you really have to do anything other than just change your thoughts, change the picture, change what you believe to be true, and instantly it will make a change. And that change may not appear instantly, but it does happen. For me, when I was, wanting to attract a house and airbrush, all of these magical things that just pop up, and it started, the only reason they stand out more is because I attached some really weird beliefs that I really, really believed at the time that was really totally unbelievable, and then it shows up. It's a 2-week, it seems like, allow things to manifest just with your thoughts, and they will happen. Photons take on form when we give them form. It is possible that nothing has form until we give it form. Since each of us is made up of photons and other subatomic energy forms, it is not too large a jump to hypothesize that we too have gates that give us form. Do we take on form according to the screens that signals the potential field exactly what form to take? Yes. If somebody's going to call you stupid, guess what? You will turn out to be stupid. You will be influenced, and that influence gives you shape and form. If so, where are gates? Assuming we can find the gates, who or what controls the gates? What gives us form? It sure is not the elites. It's coming from a different other source. In my own personal search for possible gates that gave us form, I realized that such control systems must exist somewhere in the dimension of micro-controlled systems. The most logical place was in the screens that cover each of our senses. The system must also be conscious or have some dimension of consciousness, because each control center would have the power to shift our screens. Using the holographic paradigm, I began to search into the biological networks of the human body. What I found was that the control centers that shift the screens of our information perception, storage, and transmittal systems can be located. They are within the microtubules of every cell of our bodies. The entire system is holographic. It is also quantum in nature and intrinsically connected to the hyperspatial information field. There was do a search on Holodynamics and check out what kind of videos people have on YouTube. There's one, latest one on Dr. Wolf. I think it may be 4 months old, but he does a good explanation on holographics and how it works and how light is refracted and how you are a holographic image. I don't have the link. I looked at it a while ago, so search it out. Sensory screens. We find fine-grained and gross-grained screens covering each of our senses. Evidently, the fine-grained screens separate particle information, and the gross-grained screens filter wave information. When these screens shift, what we sense changes. In other words, each of the screens is capable of controlling all sensory input. Any shift in the screens would give a different form to the potential of what is being sensed. Primbram. At this point, it is necessary to change our focus to our microtubules and the work of Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist. In his research, he was interested in the effects of certain anesthetics upon the microtubules of each cell. The microtubules are tiny tubes that form the cytoskeleton of each cell, like threads in a tapestry of cloth. Hameroff discovered that when he used certain anesthetics or microtubules, all consciousness stopped. Since all senses cease to operate when the microtubules are anesthetized, the most likely place to look for control mechanism of the screens over each of the senses would be within the microtubules. Here's a quick look before the video stops. This is one picture, microtubules associated. Can you see it? That's one sort of picture of what they look like. I'm definitely running out of time on this video. It just seems like I'm reading for a minute and there goes 15 minutes. I'm probably talking a lot more than I'm reading, but It is the best shit I've ever found, this Holodynamics. It does have a few contradictions, so that's why I'm kind of giving my point of view, but good shit if you know some stuff. Peace out.